Hello and welcome to the Alpha Anywhere demo and Q&A webcast. I'm Dave McCormick, VP of Products and Services here at Alpha Software, and I'm pleased to present Dion McCormick, no relation, who's our lead solutions engineer, or our premier solutions engineer now. He's also the founder of Giant Killer Training, of which you've probably seen some of the adverts and some of the materials around that. But he's here to give a little demo at the very beginning, somewhat of a repeat of one we've done a few weeks ago. But also he's here to answer your questions. So if you do have questions, go ahead and type them into the questions box of the GoToWebinar control panel, and we will be happy to get to them during this session. Also, as a reminder, at any point, you can always email us. We'd love to get your emails. Guides, GUIDES at alphasoftware.com is the email address to send to. So let's get started. Hello, Dion, are you there?
Yes, I am, sir. Am I coming through
Excellent.
okay?
Yeah, sounds loud and clear. I understand you're on a new
Good.
computer, so as you pointed out, it's all kinds of new
Yeah, I'm
setup
actually
things. We'll see how that goes.
yeah, it's
But
gonna be if it keeps asking me for permission of stuff, you'll know why,
yeah, fair enough. Anyway, I can see your screen and I can hear you, so it seems like we're ready to get started.
Excellent. And the most important part is the computer is plugged in,
Actually
and
plugged in. Oh, that's a good deal.
yeah, so we don't have to worry about it. So luckily that doesn't say 35 tel closure, then it would be like we got to wrap this thing up pretty
Gotta
quickly
be
there.
bad. Yeah.
But anyway, I'm working on my mobile. I'm on the road, venturing out. Actually, a little shared is how many, and you can raise your hand. I think, do we have raise hand in this thing? Well, anyway, if you can comment, had the distinct pleasure of dropping by Bucky's on the way up here. I don't know if that's more of a,
Bucky's. I don't know
yeah,
Bucky's.
Bucky's. It's like, think of it as the Disneyland of, you know, convenience slash gas stopping across America. I mean, these things are palaces. They're amazing. They literally have 50 pumps out front. They're crazy. So anyway, they popped up all over Texas. So I had the opportunity to drop in there. But that said, safe sound ready for everybody here today. As Dave mentioned, actually we did this presentation. This will be more of a recap a few weeks ago, but we had some audio visual issues. So it wasn't recorded. And we actually had a large number of people who were like, oh, I thought I liked that content. I wanted to get access to it. So can you send me the link? And we just had to keep saying sorry. So we're going to do a quick recap today. It's not going to be every little thing, but I want to make sure you understand. And it's about offline management, which is a very important issue, both for mobile development and also, when you're in the web browser, because, we support offline, whether you're in a web browser on a laptop or on a mobile device, mainly a mobile device, but we use it in both scenarios. So we're going to touch base on that today. Do a quick recap, walk through the different technologies. We're actually going to explore also a cool technology called the watch function in the control bar that was part of the overall process. So if you're seeing a little bit, as in the immortal words of Yogi Berra, if it's deja vu all over again, then you are not incorrect, and you're seeing a little bit of what was done previously. But we are recording, aren't we? I just want to make sure.
We're recording this time. As I like to say, nothing could possibly go wrong. We're fine.
Yeah, except for everything. So perfect law from that standpoint. But a couple things I want to do. This is not breaking news anymore, so it still says breaking, but we have our new Alpha Cloud plans, which are fabulous. Man, I'm so excited about that, Dave. I think that is such a just an incredible opportunity for developers, especially newer alpha developers and people who are doing special projects and things like that. I really am excited about it. I think it's going to have a dramatic impact on the ability to drive more developers to use alpha and to be able to quickly deploy no code, low code solutions, and super excited. And the pre-release is in a process. Actually, it was coming soon, but it's even more coming soon. And just wanted to go through a couple cool things. The team is obviously very busy. We talked about this before, but the new GraphQL, and we will be doing demonstrations on the webinar on that. That's a modern technique that allow you to really optimize your API interactions, allows Alpha to build very powerful APIs to support any kind of front end system along with Alpha solutions. So we're excited about that. There's also been a few other cool little things that come in. We talked about it. One of the most important things is now test databases with Alpha Cloud. So you can set up test databases on Alpha Cloud that are part of the Alpha Cloud platform. So you don't have to go out and get a separate server and do all this other stuff. It's all built in. and there's some really handy tools that are associated with that. But and then last but not least, which is very important, was the new Ionic method for developing and deploying Alpha Cloud, or I'm sorry, mobile apps. So, as people know, phone gaps kind of slowly stepping by the sideway. Adobe is not supporting that actively. So the development team has really been focused on providing a solution for our extensive developer group, or developer environment. So the new Ionic's really good, and we'll be doing some. It's called Ionic App Flow, and it has some really unique capabilities. So the team right now on that, since it's fairly new, we're working together to put together some more content, some more guidance, and other things. So when you go down that road, you're going to be well prepared, and we'll be explaining that a little bit more in the very near future.
Excellent.
But
And
also
if I
want
could
to,
just add a little
oh yes,
color to
please,
that. So
yes.
someone had written in asking about Alpha Launch, and there's also going to be a new version of Alpha Launch coming out quite soon, and we will definitely do some webinars on that topic as well, because what's even easier than building an app than using a pre-built app and loading in all your own logic into it. So that's just another way to go, and it's a alternative I think a lot of people will find attractive.
Yeah, I'm a super duper fan of Alpha Launch. It is so great, even from a prototyping standpoint. It takes so many things out of the way so you can focus on the application. Again, that's one of the fundamental tenets of Alpha software is focus on the business use case, the app itself, not on all the other stuff around it. That's really the essence of no code, load code, is that you can actually build something without having to worry about the 20 other things. And that's a really powerful tool to both do prototyping, but also limited deployment. It's very handy to do that. So I'm excited about that. You combine Alpha Launch with Alpha Cloud and our low code development environment. You've got a really key, fast moving, really powerful combination there. But I want to kind of tell you that we also have some cool new pre release capabilities. Let me go ahead and put this in our chat window so you can always check out that. Again, as we always say, pre release is not ready for production. They're tuning up, finished fixing all the last issues and stuff like that. So, uh, if you do, be very careful. But we highly suggest you wait for the production release to use this on your production environments. But some cool things about some nice user interface elements called floating labels was just added, which is very excited. A whole new way to handle images. Notice this is the floating. It's giving a little demonstration where if you have a watermark, the watermark will stay above it when you click into it. It's a pretty neat tool that a lot of people do. We have new ways for handling images, so they're part of the UX component. That's kind of nice because then it's sort of a package delivery capability. So these are all optimizations to improve the performance, speed, and capability of Alpha solutions. And some other neat ones like center panel contents. Now, you just click that and it's going to, within a panel, it's going to center everything for you. I would use alignment and other techniques like that. But now you have some really, again, little optimizations that go a long way towards making your life easier and you have to do less work. And there's a bunch of really neat underneath the ground one. Like the ones I'm very excited about are all of the new word template functions, which I don't know, we really haven't talked about, but this is so cool, the ability for you to use Word templates with JSON data to essentially roll your own reporting capability. So obviously Alpha has a reporting capability built in, but sometimes you want like a form letter kind of thing, which is really more of a Word kind of exercise. So now you can use Word templates and other things like that, and really cool stuff. So check it out. There's a whole new set of functions that are built into this release that's coming out. And again, it's pre release now. So I just want to draw attention to those. They're really good. Now, that leads me to my next thing, which is Alpha DevCon 2020. The team is very busy, not only finishing up, the pre-release elements, all these things in here, but also we're putting together the content so we can deliver that at our DevCon coming up very new. Oh, I guess carbon copy and doesn't obey the do not disturb bad software.
Yeah.
Anyway, if you have not signed up, it will be a virtual event given our environment here. Although we were virtual before virtual was cool, thanks to Dave here. But you can register now. We're going to be going into a lot of these elements deeply. So all the new capabilities and features. There'll be new roadmaps showing you where everything's going. We'll have not only our lead developers, but our fabulous team of Sarah and the marketing team and everybody there to help you out as a developer to show you what's new, where to go, how things are going, and also to answer your questions. So if you have not taken the time, head on over to Alpha Software DevCon 2020, and I'm going to go ahead and put that in the chat, man. Make sure you sign up. This is going to be well worth it. We're very excited about it. We have just the problem with this DevCon, though, Dave, I'm just going to be perfectly honest.
Yeah.
There's too much stuff to
There's
fit
a lot
into
of
the
stuff.
box. I
There's a
mean,
lot of
it's like
stuff.
that. It's
Yeah.
like Christmas, but we couldn't get all the presents under the tree. We just have too many, so they're still stuck up in the attic. We're going to list them out and let you know what they're, but we're really not going to be able to go into super
So
detail
it's
on
going to be
everything.
all A-list material though. So that's the
Yeah,
that's the nice
we're going to
part
sit
about it.
through the high impact. I mean, there's
Yeah.
so many elements there. So it's frustrating because you're like, this is so cool. This could be so helpful. But it's like, but this is even cooler and this could be helpful. And so that's actually our biggest challenge this year is not necessarily putting it together. It's figuring out what goes in the box for that. So, but we're on top of that. And I think you'll be very pleased with the content and the subject. So
Yep.
great. With that, I'm going to pop in. I want to go ahead and what we're going to do is talk regarding about the what we call offline capabilities. And I use this little image here in terms of Wi-Fi. What if you don't have it? What if you're offline? What do you do? So built into Alpha are many, many different capabilities to support offline. There's the core capabilities, which are obviously the list component, the data cache, and other elements like that. But there's also a wide range of other capabilities that we're going to kind of touch on today. And I'll show you a demonstration in terms of how you integrated it with your user interface. So I'm going to go through this very quickly, again, because we weren't able to capture it before. But basically, there are three core ways for you to deploy a offline Alpha solution. There's desktop, mobile, web browser. So right within the web browser. So we can do offline in the web browser. We can also use, as Dave mentioned earlier, Alpha Launch and then PhoneGap. And each of them have their pros and cons. So if we walk through it first, the developer or the option for desktop mobile web browser, the pro is boom, you just hit the button, deploy it to your server, and now you have an offline solution that will run in the web browser. But there are a few limitations. One is that you have certain offline data size limitations. There's only so much data you can store. You have a little less stability. I mean, you're kind of at the mercy of the browser. If the person clears their cache, does other things like that, there's nothing we can do about that. And you have limited access to mobile hardware, meaning you can't punch through and grab a lot of the hardware capabilities unless you go through a lot of hoops and the user says yes and other things like that. So there are certain there's, but again, you have basic offline capability, which is really nice. That let's say the
Dion, can
person
I
is putting in,
sorry to
oh,
interrupt you there, but
oh yeah,
just a small technical point, and that is there a way that you can make your volume just a smidge louder?
oh
I'm
yes.
looking at the VU meter here, and
Oh no
it's not
no,
making
and
it quite to
especially
where it
launch is
needs to be.
super important.
We want to get
How's
it
that coming across a
exactly.
little better?
It's a little quiet.
Okay, I'm going to pause for a second here.
Sure.
So bear with me.
I know that'd be our luck that we redo a session because there was technical difficulties, then have technical difficulties. So.
There we go. Bear with me here. Um, let's see. I am so sorry because of this. Maybe if I just spoke up a little louder, is that coming through okay?
That would totally do
You
it
know what?
too. Yeah.
I'm looking up the Yeti Nano stuff. I don't want to go through that. I would rather just go ahead and
No, not at the
talk
moment.
loudly. So I'll pretend I'm, here you go. Okay. So I will talk up louder. Thank you for
That's
catching that.
great. Thank you very much. Yeah.
No problem. We'll just cut that little piece out there. We'll drop right from here. Now, your second option is Alpha Launch. And Alpha Launch, as Dave mentioned, is a pre-configured application that's available, and we're doing an update now in your app stores so that you and your potential testers, people, can download it directly from the app store and put that on their devices. It's easy to deploy. There's no charge for Alpha Launch. You can download it. We don't charge you per user or anything like that. And Alpha Launch has a set of pre-built integrations for the hardware. So it's kind of like the ability to create your own custom app, but not have to go through a lot of the effort to do it. Now, some little downsides or cons of it is that you have to use the Alpha Launch app. It has limited branding. It's got the Alpha name on it, so you can brand it within Alpha Launch, meaning your app can have all your own branding. But as far as the icon on the mobile device and stuff like that, it's limited. Although we do have a program where we can convert your alpha launch stuff into a branded experience. And you can just contact us and we'll let you know more about that. Last but not least, there is a preset set of plugins that allow you to interact with the hardware. And that's one of the key things that's going on right now is we're taking the time to update them. We want to make sure that you have a wide range of capabilities, that kind of Pareto principle of, most of the plugins are there that you need, and that what most people use. But let's say you need some kind of odd plugin, like a special JavaScript plugin for a certain other source or system. There's limitations there. But I love Alpha Launch from a prototyping standpoint and for limited production, because you go click, click, click. It's as fast and easy to launch it as doing a web browser, because you're really just publishing a set of files to the server, and then the user within the Alpha Launch app can download that, use it, and then have a lot of the benefits of a disconnected mobile app running natively on a mobile device, but without all the hassle. Now, our third option is PhoneGap. This gives you all the pros of, you have complete control. You have full hardware access. You can fully brand it with icons, splash screens, other things like that. You can also submit them to app stores, so you can have your own custom app in the app stores. And also, you get a more native feel because you don't have a layer to go through as far as what you would do with Alpha Launch. But the cons are, you have a build process that's required. There's an extra deployment cost. You have to get, certificate licenses for Apple and a few other things like that. And it's just generally a more complex process. But that said, the team has done a fabulous job of reducing that complexity to minimize it. And every day we're trying to make it simpler and simpler. But this gives you like the full boat capability and PhoneGap, you using the PhoneGap and libraries, but there are some pros and cons in terms of more work to do that, but we do there. So, core within the system, we have the list control, we have the client-side data cache, local storage, and SQLite databases. The first three are available for any deployment option. The core one is obviously the list control that does full replication of database data down to your local device and synchronization management of that data offline, etc. Client-side data cache is more of a read-only version of that, where you can bring data down from a read-only standpoint to support other, requirements in your system. And then there's also local storage, which is just using the built-in local storage technology in the web browser to store information from there. Now, the last one, which is really powerful, but has an asterisk, which is SQLite database. Basically, you can create a SQLite database, which is an open source SQL-like tool, but it's optimized for very small footprint deployments. But the downside of that is you really need to have a PhoneGap solution, because with SQLite, it's basically using a built-in engine on the mobile device to do some of the work. And if that engine's not there, it's really not going to work. So SQLite wouldn't really work with the web browser, but it would work for there. But there's a lot of really nice things. Once you have that data down there, you can use SQL commands to query data and do other things like that. A bit more code heavy, but it opens up a lot of really cool opportunities, especially if you have large data sets that you need to bring down and have available in a read write status within the local. And also, SQLite really doesn't have built-in replication like the list control, so you'd have to do that there. One of the key things we are talking about is including that capability in the alpha launch, because that's one of those nice to have things. And if we can pre-build that, that'd be really handy there. So overall, we support a lot of really cool, I've kind of gone through all that. Options, we have a set of tools that are available, different ways to go to the sort of deployment options there. So whichever you prefer, you can pick and choose based on your need from a developer standpoint. So I want to go ahead and show you a demonstration of some of the cool capabilities built into Alpha that are just easy for you to access. And really where it came from was this, is we had an individual a while back, and I'm going to pop down here to talk about the control bar and what we're going to do there, was the issue of, hey, I have a app, it's going to be off, has to have offline capability, but how do I notify the user what the scenario is? How do you tell the application that it either has a connection or doesn't? Well, the cool thing is Alpha has a whole bunch of built-in functionality around that to make it easy for you as a developer to determine whether or not you're online or offline. And then based on that information, you can take certain steps. Now, very important, the list control and other things understands and handles these kind of scenarios automatically, meaning that if you try to do, say, for instance, a sync and you're offline, well, it just says, oh, I wasn't able to do it. It maintains that information, keeps track of it, so you don't have to worry about it. So again, a lot of the plumbing and stuff underneath is done for you. But in our case, and I'm going to jump over to our example here, go in here, we take care of those capabilities. So here is an example offline app I built, and I can, if you are interested in getting a copy of this, just let us know. Send an email to guides@alphasoftware.com. We'll send that over to you. But it's a very straightforward offline application, meaning here is my list control, it includes the list and a detail view there. It is enabled for offline. So if I click on one and maybe I change a name here and click the save here, you'll notice that here is a little orange carrot. All this is built in. Then I can click synchronize, and you'll see in a moment it'll go away as it synchronizes that data to the backend database. So now the backend database is in sync with my front end, and I'm good to go, and the user can go ahead and continue on their way. Now, one of the things I like to show is that this I'm running on my local machine here. So I'm going to go ahead and go to my web projects control panel, and I'm going to temporarily turn off my server. So this would be a classic cape of someone is at home, they're working on, because everybody should be at home now, but they're working on their solution. They go ahead and they make some edits and changes. You'll notice I can continue working. The server is off. I am not able to talk to the server. So everything is handling itself here on the local machine. And if I go synchronize, it tries to synchronize, but there's nothing there. So it keeps those offline capabilities. So let me go back in here. Let's go ahead and return on my development server. Then I'm going to go back here. I'm going to go ahead and click synchronize. And now that it can connect, you'll notice that it handled it. So the first part of my demonstration is you don't have to worry about it. Alpha will take care of managing the data integrity on the local machine. Now, as I mentioned before, I'm running this in a web browser. There are weird things that can happen in web browsers. So data integrity, we do everything in our power to maintain that. But the reality is that doesn't always happen. And so that's kind of you have to take that into account. It's really good if you have temporary disconnects, but you really can't build a bulletproof offline scenario within a web browser just because there are too many variables we do not have control over. But we try to handle it as much as possible from within that. Now, one of the things we wanted to be able to do, and this is really the heart of what we're talking about here, is notice up top here, I'm using a control bar, and you'll see I've got a little icon here that has like a little Wi-Fi symbol, and it has a name here, and then you'll notice over here it's saying connected. Well, let's go back in and let's go ahead and just turn off our development server here. And let's go back into our front end, and you'll notice, oh, it happened, which is on a timer, but you'll notice here that it's telling me I'm not connected. So what's cool about that is you can actually build into your user interface, you can build the ability for people to know whether they're offline or online. And given that situation, you can actually also take actions like put up a different icon. You can say, for instance, disable a button, or you could even tell them, and actually one of our developers, they had a certain particular situation where they wanted to notify the person that, hey, you're about to say enter some data into a form, but do know you're offline. So if you do, we're going to batch it up and send it later. If you do it now, it's going to go up immediately. Or I mean, if you're connected, it'll go up immediately. But they wanted to give awareness to the user. So they basically wanted to change the user interface on the fly. And there's some built-in functionality. So if you'll notice again, this is automatically kind of refreshing every few moments. But if I go back in here and I turn the development server on, you'll see when I go back here in a moment, this will refresh up here and the icon and the words right here will change. And I think it's on a 5-second, no, maybe it's probably 20-second turn that it's doing that. Yep, there it goes. So you'll notice that it switched and it said, oh, you know what? I now know that I'm online. So I'm going to display to the user, I've got this little symbol. And by the way, I could do things like enable then the synchronize button here. The sky's the limit. Once you know the state of your offline online, you can then take action to it. So what I'm going to do next is I want to dive in and kind of show you what are the tools I use to kind of monitor this situation. So first, let's go ahead and actually let's go back here. You'll notice here I've got these buttons: check internet, check server, check environment, and I've got those buttons, and I have little fields here. So let's go look at that. When I check internet, it's going to say, does it have an internet connection? And it's going to update this field here. Here, what I'm going to do is something a little bit more exhaustive is I'm saying check is the alpha server available. And I'm going to click that. And then you're not seeing something change here, but it's actually rewritten the connection that's saying server is connected. And then we also have something check environment. Now, when I click check environment, you'll notice it says connected unknown type. Well, check environment is more used on phone gap applications. It allows you to understand, do I have Wi-Fi? Do I have LTE? What is my connection? So the cool thing about it is the check environment is sort of like a checker on steroids, but you need the phone gap environment to really be reliable. In this case, since I'm just in a web browser, it says connected unknown type. It just can't figure this out. It doesn't have the hooks to be able to figure out. But the nice thing about that, and we won't go much detail into it, versus the check server environment is that, for instance, you could say, oh, you know what? This person is on cell, they're not on Wi Fi. So maybe you have a ton of pictures you want to update and send to the backend server. You may notify the person, well, you may want to wait till you're on Wi Fi and then trigger it when they go on Wi Fi. And I see that a lot. In fact, on my iPhone, it'll say, you know what? I've taken these different pictures. I'm not syncing them through the Photos app because you're on cellular. If you want to override that, feel free. But that way you can conserve bandwidth. And, if you're out in the field somewhere and you only have really 3G connectivity, you don't want to be trying to upload 12 megabyte photos over and over again. So those are the kind of scenarios, and that's what the check environment capability gives you, is sort of a more fine-tuned, granular level of understanding what your environment is. But let's focus on these two here. So I'm going to go into my alpha environment, and I'm going to go into my demonstration here. So you'll see I have server status. That is a text box. I have a button called check service, internet status checkbox. So I've got a checkbox there. So first, let's go ahead and look at the check server. So I'm going to double click on my OK button. Let me do a quick check. Is the audio coming through, video, everything looking good there, Dave?
Yeah, it's good. As long as you continue to speak up, we're in good shape. And video is fantastic. Thanks.
You got it. I'm projecting. That is what I'm doing.
Projecting, exactly. Great.
I should do the like at the beginning of Anchorman where he's doing his vocal exercises. It's awesome. Okay, I can't really repeat them because a lot of them are off color, so we can't do that. But if you get bored, go check that out.
You
So
can't
you'll
do that, no.
see, no. So you'll see here that built into this button, I'm just using a JavaScript command called server is available. And you'll see that it has then success or failure. And we're going to talk about a little bit of how that works. Now, first and foremost, I'm going to go ahead and say, well, where did I find this information? Well, whenever you're working with either a JavaScript function or in the text mode of the JavaScript action builder, you'll notice down, or where is it? Where is it here? You'll see we have a little blue line here called insert UX component method. So you'll see that in here, we basically have your library of JavaScript capabilities. So I'm going to type the word server, and you'll notice that it's limited is, let's see if I go farther. There we go. There's server is available. So in here, we have full documentation and an example. So this actually, and you can copy this example and plug it in your code. So what this little piece of action or JavaScript does is that it runs some special magic functions that I'm not aware of. Basically, it makes a call back to server, I'm pretty sure. And if it is successful, it runs another JavaScript function. If it does not connect, it runs another function. So in my case, what happens is that when it runs here, it runs a function called success, which does something. And then the other is that, notice this example only has success, but I have it where if it fails, it does another thing. So let's go ahead and explore that a little bit more. So very important, if you're looking for these kind of commands, you just have to click on Insert UX Component Method, and the full library is here. Now, you'll notice that in my situation, I have a single line of JavaScript that's saying server is available. This is called a timeout. It's going to run for 0.3 seconds to try to connect to the server. You could make that longer if you want, but then the reaction type might be a little slower, so it may not work for your user interface. But you'll notice I have two words here, success and failure. In that situation, what this is doing is referring to a JavaScript function called success and failure. Now, I could put that right here in this window, but what I have chosen is to put those functions in JavaScript functions over here, which I'll show you in a moment. Now, why did I do that? Well, I did that because I want to be able to use those success and failure options or functions in other places. So maybe I have a standard thing where I have a single set of JavaScript that says if it's success, I'm going to update the user interface this way. So for instance, the person who contacted us, I want to be able to change the button that says, oh, in this case, notice you're offline. And if you click here, this will be submitted at a later time. So I would put all that in a single place. Now, the important reason for that is that I'm not burying all that code in a single button here. I can reuse it over and over, and I have a central place to manage it from there. So in this case, I have a standard success function and a standard success failure. So when I click that button, it basically runs this little script. The script tries to connect to the server. If it is successful, then it says, okay, I'm going to run this success function. If it fails, it runs the failure function. And that's all it does there. And I can use this script anywhere in my application to be able to modify my application on the fly. So let's go over here to JavaScript function and look at that. So you'll notice that I have my two functions I declared here, function success and function failure. And I do two things. Well, it's very simple. All I'm really doing is setting the value of that server status field to be either connected or disconnected. So in my case, I'm doing something simple. I just want to show the user on a text box what is happening. So I'll go back here. You'll notice I have a button here and I have this server status. When I click here, it runs that option. Depending on which one, it then runs one of these JavaScript actions. If it's this one, it puts connected in that box. If it doesn't, if it fails, it puts disconnected in that box. So fairly simple. And I did this for a purpose, which I'll show you in a moment. So as you can see, it's a very simple design model. And I am not limited to just one line. I could do 5 things. I could take them to a different panel card. I could change a button. I could hide a button. I could show a button. I could do like 12 different things here in each of these functions. And therefore, if I ever need to change it, I go here and make those modifications here. I don't have to go dig it out of a button there. That's why it's very important to always try and centralize your functions for both Xbasic and also JavaScript over here in the code section so that it's easier for you to manage and maintain over time. So let's go ahead and explore our second button real quick. So our first one is check server. Now, this one, by the way, is one I highly suggest you use because this is the most kind of exhaustive one because it actually talks to the server and does some other things behind the scenes. But you do have another option, and it's called check internet. And basically, this is another function called get online status. Again, the way you find that is click on this button here, do a search for get online status, and you have this information here. And basically that basically gives you a information, a flag, a true or false saying, do I have online access? Now, the difference with this one is this just says, can I connect to the internet? It is doing a lightweight callback to our server, but it's not doing the full call. So this one's kind of, it actually, if you were doing this call over and over again, I'd probably use this one. But if you're only doing it every once in a while, then the other one's more than sufficient. It's just a heavier call in terms of the amount of effort that's needed for it to do what it's want to do. And so in this case, what I'm doing is just setting the value of our field to whatever flag comes back. So essentially they're kind of the same, but I would highly recommend that you focus on using the server is available. That's the more reliable, the one you want to use on an ongoing basis, unless you have a reason not to. Now, as I mentioned before, the last one here is the check connection type. This is another function here. Now the connection type, and I'll go to method, I'll get connection type. This one, oops, oh, I didn't want to actually insert that, so I'll go ahead and make sure I don't save it, but get connection type. There it is. Okay, so here's my thing, but do know that this is really used mainly when you're in the PhoneGap shell, which could be either a alpha launch or a full PhoneGap implementation. And this has information there, but you'll notice it returns none, connected unknown type. That's what you saw before. but also it'll tell you, are you on Ethernet, Wi-Fi, 2G, 3G, 4G, or generic cell. Future will also say 5G. So if you want to do real-time Vulkan mind melds with people, you'll be able to know if that's going to work or not. So this gives you a little bit more of the quality of your connection. That's the big difference between this and the server is available, is this not only tells you is the server available, but it also tells you what is your bandwidth. And again, if you're on 3G or something like that, you may want to avoid doing certain things. But if you're sending little text messages, you say, oh, I've got a connection, good to go. So, but again, you're only going to get reliable if it's running on the phone gap shell. That's just kind of the way it goes. But it's handy and it's very useful, especially for data intensive applications that are out in the field. So that's get connection type. So as you can see what I do before I screwed up this, so I'll cancel. And I will say, no, I don't want to save my changes. I do something very similar where I just run that call. It gives me the connection type. And then I'm filling out that field saying what that connection type is. And that's what you saw on the user interface. Okay, so those are very simple calls. They're built into it. But now there's the next step that I wanted to show you, and I did in my previous, and I'm going to go there, and then we'll wrap it up and do some questions on this and obviously anything else you want. So let's go ahead and go back into the demonstration. So you'll notice I'm connected. A couple things here. You'll see it's run this check internet. I've got true, I've got connected, and I've got connection unknown type here. And you'll notice that before this will refresh every few moments doing that. So let's go ahead and do the following. Let's go back in here and let's turn off the development server. Get back here. And in a moment, we'll give it, I really want to see it work. In a moment, I'll take a small sip while we're doing that. Oh, we must have hit it before the 20-second mark. Come on, baby. Ah, there you go. What we did is this is a control bar. We told the control bar to refresh itself. The control bar said, oh, you know what? The control bar is looking at these fields here and it says, oh, I'm going to modify what is in my control bar based on what's in those fields. And I'll do a refresh. And you saw that little swipe there. That was on purpose to show you when something is changing. You do not have to do that. The cool thing about it is when you don't do it, these icons and words will just change on the fly. So let me dive into how I've set up that control bar. So I'm going to go in here. I'm going to go into my demonstration. And the first thing I'm going to do is go up to my control bar and open up my control bar. So remember, a control bar is made up of different items. So you'll see I have different items. I have HTML server connected, HTML server not connected, title, and test. These are just some different information here. Now, the reason I call it HTML server connected is that this is just a piece of HTML that can be fixed or some other method. So if I go over and look at my layout is how I take these items and display them on the screen. So you'll see on the left-hand side, I've got two things called server connected, server not connected. And to be honest, those are two SVG icons. Then I have my title here. So let's go ahead and go back in and look at those items. So I'm going to look at server connected and server not connected. You'll see here that I have those item names. Here is the text that's showing. And you'll see that we have a show expression below it for each of those texts. So remember, and let me just jump real quick. I'm looking at this over here. You notice it says connected or not connected. These are the two different items, and only one of them is being shown at a time. And basically, I'm dictating how those are shown by using this show expression. So basically, both of those, if I go back here, are on the screen, but you're seeing that only one of them is going to be shown because we've got this little rule that server status is equal connected or server status not equal to connected. So the question is, what is this server status thing? Well, that's something I created, and it's called a data element. This is where it gets a little bit more interesting, a little trickier, but the way to go. So again, items are things that you can place on your control bar. You can determine their show expression. You can actually determine their HTML text also using the same capabilities here. So now what we're going to do is the following. Where am I getting this server status? Well, with a control bar, you can have what's called a data element. So a data element is, think of it as like a variable, almost like an argument on a UX that allows you to store data and update that data on the control bar. And there's two ways to do it. You can create this little server status, and then I can write code, JavaScript, to say, hey, control bar, here's the new value of server status, and go ahead and refresh yourself. Well, very interesting is built into the control bar is an even better solution. which means you can create a data item that is what's called uses a watch control. So what this does is this little data item here will watch a certain control on your user interface. And when that control changes, it will automatically do something. So in my case, or I'm sorry, it won't automatically do something. What it will do is automatically update itself. So you'll notice I have a data item here called server status. It is watching a field called server status. And based on that server status, it's running this JavaScript. So whenever this server status changes, i.e., and I'll show you that field in a moment, what it's going to do is say, oh, it changed. I'm going to go ahead and run this JavaScript. Now, this JavaScript could be anything, but all I do is say, oh, you know what? Get the value of that field and let service status or server status become that value. So let me go ahead and do this. Let me scoot this over a little bit so you can see what's going on. So I've got this thing called server status. And remember, when I click this button, this server status is either connected or not connected. So now what happens is when that changes, this fires and basically it reads the value of what's in that field and sets the value of this data item. Now that that's been set, guess what? I can sit there and say, oh, server status, which is that data value, is that equal to connected, or in this case, not equal connected? Okay, then show this value. If not, show this value. Notice I've got the EE. And what's very important about these show expressions, these are JavaScript functions. That's why you have the little equal and the little single ampersand. So it's a little tricky. You have to just remember that. So the cool thing is now that I've set that up, I don't have to worry about the control bar. What will happen is the control bar will sit there, look at this field. When this field changes, it's going to update this data element. And when that happens also, it's going to go ahead and automatically refresh. So everything gets taken care of for me automatically. The cool thing about that is that it takes a little bit more to set up, but once it's set up, you don't have to write a whole bunch of monitoring code to watch things. The control bar will do that for you. And I highly recommend doing that because guess what? A week from now, you'll forget how you set up all that monitoring code. That's just classic, little more detailed stuff. It's better to have the control bar say, hey, you know what? I've got these data elements. I'm going to watch all these things and I'm going to update myself based on that information. So very, very powerful from that standpoint there. So one other thing I wanted to do was show you that, well, you know, when we ran this, let me go here. When I run that, when I click like check server or check internet, it runs that little piece of code. Remember that code that does a failure or pass and then updates this level there. But you'll notice that this is updating on a consistent basis. So I don't want to have the user click on this button. I would rather have my UX periodically check to see what's going on and update things accordingly. So the way I set that up is the following. Is built into the UX is a really cool feature. So I'm going to go here to properties and I'm going to go and I'm going to find timer. So again, I went to properties on the UX control properties and I'm looking for timer or has on timer event. And you'll notice that in my UX, I have enabled on timer event and I've given it a event interval. So this is a cool capability that allows you to say, hey, every so many, in this case, seconds, 20 seconds, I want you to run some JavaScript code. In my case, I'm doing the check to see if I'm online. So I can periodically check, and if I've determined I'm online or offline, I can change my user interface. Now, the individual who called in, I may not want to do it this method. This is really nice. It's just maybe when they click a button, before I do something, I go ahead and run my code because I may not want to be checking the status all the time. I only want to check it when they're going to go enter a value. I just want to be able to say, hey, go run and check and see if the server's available. It is, then give them this information or not. So it really is up to you. You don't have to use this method to do your work. So I've enabled on timer event. I've done the on timer event term interval. So now what I'm going to do is go over here to client side events and look for what's called the on timer event, ONTIMER. And what did I put in here? Oh, cool. I just put in that little piece of script that will do the check to the server. So every 20 seconds, this UX will run this little piece of JavaScript, or it will trigger this on timer event that will run whatever JavaScript is in here. By the way, you can use it like to refresh lists, panel cards, etc. There's many methods to do that. Again, this is kind of a pull function versus a push. If you're looking for push, you can use like the pusher technology. But you can see every 20 seconds going to run this. So think of it as a chain of events. So every 20 seconds, it runs this. When that happens, it's going to either do let me go here, JavaScript functions. It's going to run this success or failure. It's basically going to set the value of one of my fields to either connected or disconnected. And that's that field right here, server status. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into my control bar. Now in the control bar, I have this cool watch function that is looking at that field. So if that field changes, like for instance, it runs in 20 seconds, it changes the value of that field, then this is going to trigger automatically. I'm going to grab the value of that field, put it into my variable, and then boom, refresh the control bar, and you're going to see icons show, close, etc. You're going to see the text come up there. So think of it as a chain of events. And again, a little maybe hard to get your head around first, but the beauty of this is that once you've set it up, it just works. You don't have to remember, oh, the person did this, so I have to go and write this 3 lines of JavaScript to check the status, then go to the control bar and update a value on the control bar and then refresh it, do this stuff there. You don't have to do all that. It's very, very handy to do that. So this is the method I use. I'm using these core functions to determine the server's available. I've written my own uh, success and failure. Now, up to you. I went ahead and put it into a field. This actually makes it easy during the debugging session. And then in my control bar, I went ahead and watched those fields. But you don't have to do that. In the, for instance, if you wanted to, in these functions right here, you could have written the code to call the control bar, update the data, and refresh it. So you don't have to use watch lists, but I wanted to introduce that, or watch functions, because I thought it's really handy and nice and easy to set up and useful in many other cases besides just this. But I could write 3 or 4 lines of JavaScript that says grab that value, update the control bar, make it refresh, do this, and gives you more flexibility in terms of how you want to do it from there. So that is how to incorporate online, offline sort of monitoring into your application. And very important is that you can then give a better user experience to your users, because they don't get frustrated. Like, I clicked synchronize and nothing happened. What's going on? You can kind of preempt that by saying, oh, guess what? Put up a big note saying you're offline currently. Go ahead and continue your work. When you're online, I'll go ahead and take care of it. In fact, when you're online, I could check the status and say, oh, they went from offline to online in this success here. And then I could say, go ahead and maybe do a list update or update some other things or trigger a synchronization automatically for the user, so they don't even have to think about it. This will do it automatically. So there's very simple little functions, but you can wrap them into very powerful user experiences to make the life of your users so much more handy and useful than what they're dealing with now. So that is the disconnected demonstration. Again, a little bit of a repeat before, but if you'd like a copy of this, please just send an email to guides@alphasoftware.com. We'll get that out to you. And we really appreciate everybody who wrote in, said, hey, we really like it. Please do it again. We'd love to hear it. I mean, that's our job, is to do everything we can to empower you. And I hope for the individual who wrote in, this helps them kind of get solidified in terms of how they're going to approach that specific use case they were putting together. So with that, I'm going to hand it back to Dave for any questions.
Fantastic. Well, first of all, I,
There we
I
go.
want to apologize for not introducing Sarah earlier on. Sarah Mitchell is a
Yes.
key member of these presentations, behind the scenes answering questions. She's in charge of our documentation department here at Alpha Software. So thank you. And she's put a whole bunch of links actually in the chat window, so you can find the documentation pieces that for the presentation that Dion was referring to today. So you might want to go grab those out before the webinar is over. Yeah.
Oh, one thing real quick, Dave, is that Sarah also mentioned there's a really cool function that she mentioned, that sometimes you want to simulate being offline and other things like that when you're in development. You don't necessarily want to have to deploy everything and do everything. So I'll let her talk about it, because she brought it up and I thought, oh, that's a great idea. I missed it when I was doing my research. But Sarah, if you want to just go ahead and let people know about that, that's a very handy capability.
Yeah, it is. We have a function that will let you simulate the online status. So if you want to test within the development environment itself, there's a function on the dialog object called underbar set simulated online status. And I've pasted a link to that function in the chat so you guys can go and look that up.
Oh,
But
cool.
it lets you just sort of you put that on a button or something and simulate it turning it on and off and see how that works right there while you're working on your app.
Which is really super handy because otherwise, like I had to kind of deploy it and turn on and off in fact, I wish I had known about this when I first created this because I was like deploying and then turning it on and off my development environment, the server to show the different, make sure everything worked. But you can use this, which is really cool, which basically I think this just intercepts those calls and fakes a response that you desire. So it really, when you're doing kind of the development and testing out things, this can make your life a lot easier. And Sarah, thank you so much for bringing that up. I mean, that's our key goal here is to make our developers' lives easier, and that's a really nice capability.
Excellent. And we can also, I believe, we can share this UX component as well, besides just the
Oh
video.
yeah,
Is that correct? Great. So again, email to
absolutely.
guides@alphasoftware.com and we will send it off to you. So we do have a
By the
couple of
way,
offline,
it will get to you faster if you use the magic word. That's always
which is
something we
which
want to
is
hear.
which is now. That's the magic word. I'd like
Yeah,
it now. Yeah.
which is yeah. Don't screw it up again, Dion. That's the magic
Cool.
words.
So this is a really terrific question, and I want to start with it first. And it's someone is saying, look, the offline capabilities are cool, but what happens if multiple users are offline and they're changing the same record at the same time, and then they both go to synchronize? Is it
I
like
love it.
matter
That
and
is
antimatter?
great.
Do things blow up, or how do we handle that?
Well, let me go ahead and show you that.
Excellent.
That's a great question. The cool thing is that Alpha takes care of it for you, so you don't really have to worry about that. So I'm sorry I'm jumping around like that, but I have to get onto my machine here. So let's do an example of that. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do a working preview here. So I'm inside my development environment. Oop, I better turn on my server so we're online. Okay. So I'll go ahead and restart this. Okay, so I'm running inside my here, and I'm running it in the browser. So I'm pretending I'm two folks here. So I'm going to go back here, and I'll just go ahead and do a refresh, make sure everything is up there. Oh no, oh yeah, now it goes in there. Oh, reload. Did I turn it off or did I turn it on? Yeah. Oh, I turned it off. I don't know why that icon was red. Everybody saw that was red, or else I'm losing it. Okay, we're back online. So night, very important, and would have preserved everything. So let's say I'm out here and I go ahead and okay, sorry, I lost my train there. Let's say I am offline or my server goes offline. So
Hmm?
I'm out in the field and I change this, and I'm going to go ahead and save that. Now I'm not hitting synchronize yet because I've modified that and I'm offline there. Did that add a new record here? That's interesting. I'll have to see that. You should have done this. Okay. There we go. Okay, that's what I wanted there. Okay, so I've got that information here. So I'm offline, I've changed it. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn on my development server. I'm going to go in here and let's go ahead and I'm going to go ahead and refresh this. So let's pretend I'm like now Joe Schmo. I'm out in the wilds. I've been online, so I've been working away, and I go to this Bergs right here, and I'm going to go ahead and change that. Oh, this must be old stuff here. So let's go to, I think it's there. Yeah, I'll go 1, 2, 3. I'm going to save that, and I'm going to synchronize it. Okay, so user number 2, Joe Schmo, who's out in the field, changed that record and synchronized successfully the backend database. Well, Jane Schmo, who is elsewhere, has been offline, is not able to connect. So now, is this on here? Let's make sure our developer server's on. So now they go to their browser and they say, go ahead and synchronize. So now they're going to synchronize, and you'll notice something. And this is great because I didn't have to do anything here. You'll see that for my Bergs right here, it's giving me a little red icon next to my yellow update, and it says, Rutrow, you have a write conflict. So Alpha behind the scenes automatically compared my state against the database and realized that someone else had changed that record since the last time I saw that and the last time I edited it. So now Alpha automatically on the client here gives me this interface. I can click here and it's showing me, oh, here is my record, here is theirs. Notice it's the 123 that the other person updated. So now I can say, oh, you know what? That's cool. Let's just go ahead and use 123. And then I synchronize. And now I am in full synchronization with the backend database. And that was all done by Alpha. I didn't write a single line of script to do that. Now, that said, if I want to, this is the default behavior, but I can take control of that and maybe force them to change it or update. I can do other things. So I can detect those sort of conflict issues and then write my own little scripts to do things differently. It's really up to you. But notice how I didn't have to do anything. I just basically built into the list control is that sort of conflict managed directory. So you're going to love it. You don't have to worry about it. And that's how you handle it. You just let Alpha handle it, and it will do that behind the scenes and make sure that you don't have that situation where, I've changed it, someone else has changed it in between, and they don't have that awareness of it. So
That is awesome. Would you
yeah,
mind digging in just a smidge to show where that setting is in case you want to change it? Maybe you don't want to give the
yep.
user the option. Maybe you always want
So
the last value.
very good point. So I'm going to go in here and I'm going to go to my controls. So remember, the list control is not only presenting the data, it's handling all the editing, managing of offline data. So I'm going to double click on that and I'm going to go in here. So you'll notice I have, I'm going to go to list properties. And most important thing I'm going to do is go down to, where is it? It's on sync. Where's my sync? I'll go ahead and search here. Oh, you know what? I think it's on the detail view. Excuse me. With a list control, when you do editing offline, it adds this little menu here. Everything involved with that here. And you'll see down here, we have a series of server-side events called validate, server-side error message, on sync, after sync. Here is where, in this situation, you can create a little function that will allow you to trap those synchronization errors and then take advantage. So what happens is when Alpha goes to the synchronization, it has these functions that it will say, if you want to check it before I do stuff, then just go ahead and I'll give you all the information about the synchronization, but it's up to you. But this is where you would do the modification to maybe auto force it to be a certain value. Maybe the last person to edit it, it's real, or maybe it does, does something else. But this is where you would do that within the detail view of the list control under the server side events. You also have client side events, which also are a wide range of things that are available. I'm not sure if, I'm not sure if you can trap things at different like validation errors and things like that. So, and you can do this like before you synchronize a list and things like that. But in here are the hooks for you to determine whether the server, and remember the work is done on the server. The list control basically says, hey, here's all my changes, sends it to the server. The server then analyzes it and then sends a message back to the list control saying, hey, I processed everything. You can remove the markers on these rows, but guess what? This row has a conflict. Go ahead and show the user and let them address it there. So that's where you would handle it within the system.
Excellent. Thanks very much. And someone asked, well, what happens if both people are offline and they both come back online and they both hit the sync button at the same time?
Then the universe ends. The final count.
In
You could
reality,
experiment.
one of them is always chosen as the first one to go in.
Exactly.
If it's only by a
Then it,
microsecond, yeah, so the server is smart
yes.
enough to handle that. So
Well, it's called beat the, what is it? Beat the buzzer, like the old game show.
beat the
Beat the
buzzer,
buzzer.
sure,
If
yeah.
that what's going to happen is both are going to be slayed that work right conflict. What will happen is the first person is going to hit the button. It's going to resolve the conflict for them, and it's going to update that record in the backend database. Then the other person is going to go ahead and say synchronize, and then it's going to rerun the code and say sorry, even though you've updated that, you're still out of sync. So it's going to be the system will trap that scenario, but it's going to be up to the user to finally resolve that, or for you to write the scripts to be able to say do those kind, to handle it for them. But it's going to be sort of, hey, whoever's quicker on the buzzer.
Excellent. Well, we are out of time, but it looks like there were a few questions we did not get to. One that has to do with alpha launch. Another one has to do with setting the duration for a timeout. And so if you could send out those questions to guides, GUIDES at alphasoftware.com, we will be happy to get back to you with the answers. And we can also do them in our next presentation. So Dion and Sarah, thank you very much for being here and presenting, answering questions. And thanks all of you for showing up and asking those questions. We hope to see you at the next webinar Wednesday. Take care, have a great week, and stay well. Bye-bye.